this is a really interesting design tool that I can use to develop. I guess what you're saying, like the patterns, or like in my brain, I'm thinking like the gameplay loops,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other half of me is like, what a really fun way to break down and analyze, like other games, like
Mm.
what's happened here.
Okay, so I don't know. Do you want to read through it?
Sure. Yeah, I'll try. I'll put my best speaking voice on. It's a bit long, but I've tried to make it interesting as a story. Uh, for context, at the bottom, I've got some of the notes that I was sort of thinking about before I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wanted
Down
to
at the bottom.
incorporate sort of the main mission, and how that plays to the player,
Okay.
but by the time I was writing out just a fight and collecting a little thing and doing like a side mission type, it had already grown quite large. And I thought at that point, I'm basically just creating a narrative of the game's narrative, and it's less of a player story.
Mm-hmm.
So I omitted it. But yeah, this. Yeah, I guess I'll just jump right into it with that context.
Yeah. So just to remind anyone who might be listening and or what have you, do you want to describe what a player story is?
Yeah, so this is a concept you introduced to me just last stream, so two
Mm-hmm.
weeks ago. But from what I understand, it's essentially a narrative construction to represent the player experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so telling a story that sort of encapsulates what it's like to play the game.
Mm. Yep.
Is that fair assessment? Got
Yep.
it?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Cool.
And yeah, and this one is of Yakuza. I've titled it Yakuza Kiwami 2. It's not really specific enough to necessarily fit that, but the general idea of what it's like for me to have been playing Yakuza.
Okay. Cool.
Cool. I'll get right into it then.
Mm.
It's midnight and I'm standing in the middle of a crowded street. Conversations wash over me as I move out from under the bright neon signs into a nearby narrow alley. Nightly civilian foot traffic has eroded the stark boundary between public park and asphalt, encroaching on the lone swing set and weathered wooden benches. It's quiet in the park. Children know to go home when the sun sets on Kamurocho. I turn back to the passage between the city's attractions, my fastest route, when a glint sparks in the corner of my eye, a small reflection of the neon-soaked street coming from an outstretched finger of the dead tree boxed in the back corner of the park. A silver key and a cheap yellow plastic tag. Taihei Boulevard, Kotobuki Drugs. I slip it into my jacket pocket. Who knows what it might unlock? The alley grows tighter, the buildings bend unnaturally overhead. Bikes, bins, boxes, and cones litter the sides. A couple are coming toward me, their hushed conversations ending abruptly. They form a single file, keeping their heads down. They splash through the water pooled along our path, and I side up onto the step of a back door to let them pass. I watch them hurry by the park, their demeanor lightening every step they take into the color-saturated street, before rounding the corner and leaving my crash. A tough-looking man bounces off me and stumbles, his polished leather shoes coming under his body and a hand shooting out to catch the wall before he can fall and dirty his cheap-looking suit. His heated gaze snaps to meet mine at the same moment the stench of booze assaults my nose. Excuse me, I say, drowned out by the sounds of a bottle smashing on the ground between us. My drink, the drunk says. That was a good bottle, real vintage. You owe me 1 million. I start to move and reply, no. Three similarly cheaply dressed men step out to block my forward path. You're not leaving without making things right. Weren't you taught that as a kid, or are we going to have to beat you till you respect us? The drunk chirps from behind. There's only one way this ends. Four thugs against the Dragon of Dojima. Their leader tries for a heavy blow, naively assuming that an attack from behind is more likely to hit. One of his friends rushes my front to distract. Stepping to the side, I grab the leader and swing him into his friend, flattening him on the ground in front of me and pressing my foot on his head. Using the leader's momentum, I swing him up into the air high above me before bringing him back down onto my knee atop the foot on his friend's temple. One knocked unconscious, one left too injured to fight, two still standing. I move on the bigger one and strike 2, 3 times before he blocks my fourth. I see the other, a smaller man, pull a knife, and I step to dodge an inevitable thrust, but my arm refuses to move. The bigger man used the block to grab me. I try to pull free, but my arm doesn't budge. The man smiles at my attempts. A searing pain shoots through my body, pulsating in waves from my side. Unfortunately for them, they missed anything vital. While being held, the small man pulls the knife out, readying for a second go. When I snap kick the knife out of the man's hands, it floats in the air, twisting and spinning, catching the light like the first snowflake of winter. The two are entranced. I headbutt the bigger man, who releases me, to grasp his now profusely bleeding nose. The smaller man looks confused when I grab the knife and return the favor. He crumples to the floor, his hands around the grip, while his body holds the blade. I think he's grateful I missed anything vital. While the bigger man is dazed, I grab his head and slam it into the wall, knocking him unconscious. I gained a little experience from this fight, but a good amount of money, suggesting that I wasn't their first target tonight. The pain in my side persists, but I need to be in full strength to do what I was on my way to before those thugs. A sign in the distance stands out amongst the others, a chemist. The door slides on its automatic rollers and a welcoming chime plays as I step onto the bright white tiles. An older man with hair matching the colour of his clean lab cloak greets me. I ask for medicine to help with the wounds from the fight. We have plenty over-the-counter options, he says, gesturing to the aisles behind me. But I apologise, our most recent hire has lost the key to our stronger medicine. Unless we find where they dropped it, we won't be able to sell anything stronger. A key for medicine? I pull the small key with the yellow tag. Is this the key I'm missing? The pharmacist looks stunned. Yes, it is. Where did you find this? Oh, never mind that. He turns and crouches briefly before turning back to me with a bottle of medicine. On the house, he says with a smile. I drink it and use the money from the fight to buy some more bottles for later. With a clear head, I think about the fight, how the big man used a block to grapple me, a technique I could apply in the future. My experience makes me stronger.
Wow, that's actually really interesting. Can we sort of go through that and maybe analyze it a little bit?
Yes, I would love to. I just
Yeah.
had to have a little drink.
So okay, wow. So all right. Now this is the first time I've heard this, so I'm kind of processing the whole thing as well. So this is a narrative snapshot of the player experience of Yakuza Kiwami 2. Okay, so like so is this? I guess I'm trying to get an idea about how this would be in the game. Is this something? Is this kind of describing a normal sort of encounter, something that you would encounter sort of on a regular basis in the game? Is that sort of what we're looking at here?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
It's a couple different things that I've encountered playing the game separately that I've sort of stitched together to make a more cohesive narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So the first aspect, aside from, just the general description of the environment, the first main thing being like the park with the key hanging on a branch is reminiscent of there are coin lockers in the game, and you find the keys around the world, then you go to the coin locker and you get different things unlocked.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is there's so many side missions in the game where, you might find an item on the street or have to go buy someone an item from a shop to be able to... In Kiwami 2, there's a lot of, like, you can befriend shopkeepers. And so once they become a friend, if you get in a fight nearby, they'll help you out.
Okay.
So that first part is, like, trying to mix the idea of picking up those collectibles, but also... And I was just talking to Jem about this yesterday. I really love how you can find the solution to a side mission before you find the side mission itself. So that idea of picking up the key and being like, I can pick this up, therefore it will be useful, and then finding the use for that later.
Right. Okay. So there's sort of multiple threads kind of going through this then. So let me sort of start from the beginning. So we're standing in the middle of the crowded street, nighttime. So you're describing conversations wash over me as I move out from under the neon signs into a nearby alley. Okay, yeah. So describing the actual environment itself. So public park and the asphalt, the boundary being eroded, encroaching on lone swing set. Yep. So this is the type of the first you're sort of framing it there where you actually are in the world. Quiet in the park. Children know to go home when the sun sets, so there's no kids there as well. Okay. I turn back to the passage between the city's attractions, fastest route. So you're going. Okay. So again, that sort of talks about navigating around. And then when a glint sparks the corner of my eye, so this is that whole thing that you were just talking about, finding the solution to a puzzle or to a unlockable, I guess. Not really
Yeah,
a puzzle, I
exactly.
guess. Yeah. A small reflection of neon soaked street coming from an outstretched finger of the dead tree. Okay, so yeah, silver key, and you got the name there, and you keep it. Yep, yep, cool. So that's the sort of setup for a later encounter. So then we've got the alley grows tighter, buildings bend unnaturally overhead, bike spins. Okay, so you're talking about the environment again. Encounters with NPCs. So this is a really interesting one. So a couple coming towards me, and that's actually one I really did enjoy watching your gameplay there as well. The way that the NPCs kind of go about their day and do different things. So hushed conversation ending abruptly. They form a single file, keeping their heads down, splash through the water. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's sort of talking about how you interact with. I guess the can you interact in any other way with those NPCs?
Some NPCs you can go up and talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll sort of give you a few lines of dialogue relevant to the area they're standing in.
Mm-hmm.
These NPCs in particular, it was a mix of I wanted to start building tension so that the fight, there was a lead up to the fight,
Mm-hmm.
by making like the alleyway get narrower and by making people seem more on edge.
Yep.
But on the other flip side of that is there's many, many, many encounters through the Yakuza games that I've played so far where some thugs will try to shake you down, and it's well implied in the game that you're not their only target. Like they've been doing this to multiple other people. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you'll bump into somebody who has been shaken down, and they'll ask you to go and sort them out. And so I was trying to allude to the idea that this couple that walked by had
Mm-hmm.
just been, kind of robbed, and hence that's why they were tense.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay, okay, cool.
I've
Right.
never
So
seen
yeah.
anything like explicitly like, or I guess more implicitly in the game. Like,
Yeah.
it's typically like you either bump into the thugs and you beat them up, or
Yep.
you bump into someone who's like, those thugs took my money. So it's not usually like, something you can pick up on, but you might see little bits of conversation. They throw up conversation and speech bubbles that'll be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's a bunch of angry thugs around that corner. Watch where you're going.
Hmm. Okay, so that's quite interesting. So, I mean, you could potentially include that. So that's sort of something like having that couple turn up. In a way, like it's interesting. So to me, this could be like the beginning of like a design pattern there. So that's almost like the herald kind of telling you that there's something coming up. If you could use that each time, it may not be a couple, could be an old person or a single person, but their demeanor and everything, like you were just saying, tells you that there's something's happened, and that it's sort of building up to the next part. I may just be repeating what you were saying, but correct me if I'm
Yeah.
incorrect, if I'm wrong. Yeah,
No, I'm with you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So okay, so then every step they take into the color section street. Yep, and then crash. So you actually run straight into someone. Presumably, this is the whole that colliding with someone is part of the shakedown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's like there are like the game will spawn groups of enemies that
Mm-hmm.
patrol certain areas,
Yeah.
and they have like a detection range and like
Mm-hmm.
a vision cone. If you cross it, they'll run up and try and fight you.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in like Zero and Kiwami 1, if you bump into an enemy, they immediately get aggressive.
Right.
I'm also thinking of a side story in Kiwami 1 where it was literally like these five thugs would walk in a really wide line down the street, And so if you approach the street, it'd throw you into a cutscene where you bump into them in this fashion. So
Right.
a bit of a
Right.
mix of like the more scripted and also the generated enemies.
Okay. And if I sort of take this sort of to its sort of further through, I mean, this is informing whoever is creating the AI of sort of how this is going to be, like the behavior of the AI enemies as well.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't even I've been so focused on this idea that the player story is like the designer's sort of uh like extra, I can't think of the words.
Contemplation or
Yeah, like the
yeah.
a resource to help make those design decisions. But I
Mm,
guess, yeah, there's no reason why, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, like anyone else
mm,
on the team, if they had the time or needed it, could
mm.
use a document like this to help get a better visual, to
Yeah.
a better understanding through that narrative sense. And then, they apply their own critical thinking
Mm.
on, okay, well, if I'm working on, like you said, the AI, how can I make it align better with their vision? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think if you were sort of looking to sort of create, like documentation on this, you'd just as sort of an example, you would have obviously you've got the non-player characters, then you've got like a scenario going on. They're doing, like you were saying, patrolling around, and then I guess you describe if you're doing documentation for your development team, you'd sort of talk about sort of what they do, how they go, and how they react, but you do it very succinctly, I guess, in maybe even dot points. This is what sort of happens.
Hmm.
But to see the player experience, to sort of then follow it back up, if you were the programmer who was told, yeah, you need to create or the team, you need to create the AI for these patrolling thugs, then you can sort of go back up the hierarchy and read this, and I think this is kind of where, like, this is the essence of what you're looking for. This is the kind of feeling that you're looking for. This is the experience you're wanting. So it's not just, it takes it out of that dry, this is the behavior, this is the sort of step by step, and brings it into that experience, the human experience side of things. So, yeah.
And I had an interesting. I remember when you were reading the one for Rust,
Hmm.
being interested in how well you sort of have to navigate boiling player decisions down into creating that narrative. And it happens here in this paragraph where the drunk is like, pay up.
Hmm.
Um, it's a really fun moment in these games because they usually give you a chance to say something or do something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Um, so like, I didn't, in writing this, I'm like, I can't really describe that. That's definitely something more for that sort of dot point documentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I, it's one of those ones where like thinking about this scene when I was writing it, I'm like, you definitely would be given the option as the player to be like, sure, here's 1 million yen, or I only have X amount, or just no. And
Yeah.
Jem and I were talking about how what I love in Yakuza is the game inside the game for the most part is really serious. All the
Hmm.
characters, they're very serious, they have business to do.
Hmm.
But it feels like the writers know that there are just pure comedic scenarios and will
Hmm.
lean into that. And you get that really fun dynamic of like this really serious character doing something extremely funny and nobody in the universe acknowledging it.
Okay.
As I was ever so slightly pulling that through with just the flat no and
Right.
like moving on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, they're things you need to be aware of. And I mean, how do you communicate again to your development team? This should be comedic. I mean, it's not.
Mm.
You can't really do that very easily in the technical documentation, but you can certainly do it at this level. So let me carry on. So just I'm interested. So you got the tough looking man bounces off you, stumbles. So you got the description of the thugs as well, which again for your art department in that situation, obviously going to be important. Um, So cheap looking suit. Okay, heated gaze snaps to meet mine. So he's obviously drunk as well, I'm assuming. Excuse me, I say drowned by the sounds of the bottle smashing on the ground. My drink, drunk says a good bottle of real vintage. Yeah, okay, real vintage, sure. You owe me 1 million. Okay, start moving. Reply no. Okay, so in this you got options. Is that what you were just saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Like it's one of those situations where like they'll throw out a silly number like a million
Mm-hmm.
yen.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love is it's like sometimes you do just have a million, and so you
Mm-hmm.
can just be like, okay, yeah, sure, here, and you just completely like sidestep the fight,
Okay.
uh, which I think is just like it's that little bit of planning I think to make sure like, well, what if the player does have a million yen,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're not leaving without making things right. So this is the dialogue. Yep. Gonna beat you till you respect us. The drunk chirps from behind. From behind. Only one way to end this. Four thugs against the dragon of Dojima. Leader tries for a heavy blow. Okay. So describing the combat here as well. Kniving,
yeah,
assuming the tap behind is more likely to hit. Yep.
I felt odd going into such detail for the fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like a part of me was being like, this feels, just self-indulgent in a way.
Mm.
But I was thinking
Doesn't
like,
come across that way.
oh, that's good.
No.
um, I was thinking it is, one of the key parts of the player experience. It's one of the
Yeah.
major mechanics. There's a whole combat system. I think if I were to redo it, I would have lent more into splitting up because with the combat in Yakuza, you have your regular attacks and you have heat actions. So
Mm-hmm.
you do enough regular attacks, you build up your heat gauge, and then that lets you do the special moves that do more damage.
Oh right.
So
Okay.
I
Yep.
think I would have liked to have split it up a bit more. As a Yakuza player, I can see the difference between the heat actions and the regular attacks. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thinking about the fact that like anyone from any department should be able to look at a document like this to help draw inspiration, I think it would be nice to be a little bit clearer in there.
So you didn't include it? Is that what you're telling me? You didn't include the sort of heat interaction?
No, and like no direct references. This is maybe I
I
don't know if you
would. I'd
remember.
suggest that you probably would
Right.
somehow. Um, yeah. Don't be shy.
Well,
Don't be afraid to include more detail there. Because I can certainly see how you could say, I mean, but how would you describe that as a player action? It's like I can as the fight goes on, I can feel my adrenaline moving. I don't know how you do it, but maybe that's
well,
one way.
I don't know if you remember the the gameplay footage from the other week, but when your heat gauge fills up, or when you
Mm-hmm.
perform heat actions, you get like the blue fire particle effect going on around you.
Right.
So that feels like a really not only a good thing to reference in this narrative for
Mm.
the sort of VFX team,
Mm-hmm.
but also a good way to differentiate that because that's what they do in the game, right? Your light
Mm.
attacks, your regular attacks are just standard animations, and then your heat actions will have a special cutscene associated and all
Right.
of the sort of VFX going off.
Yeah.
So
So I would definitely include that in something along these lines. So, I mean, you could do a second version and try and put that in. As I wouldn't like it doesn't come across as indulgently. I mean, this is it really I think it really effectively gets the idea across. So, but you could go more into it for sure. I don't think we'd have a problem with that. So yeah, so describing all this is cool. That's fine. So talking about how the combat it works. It's kind of interesting. This one pulling a knife. Now in a game, sure, it's like, in a game we understand. It's quite interesting. So hearing you describe this, because this is more like a short story, and so I'm thinking the framing is like as you would if you were listening to a short story. And so pulling a knife and getting stabbed is like, and then just walking. Ah, that's fine. I just walked it off. Sort of. Which
yeah,
in a game, yeah, no problem. But in a short story, oh yeah, I got stabbed and I was fine. I just walked it off and went to a chemist and he gave me some aspirin and I was all good. it's actually just funny to hear that,
Yeah,
the sort of cognitive dissonance in a way, I think, from the different genres. So a story compared to a game, where we accept it in game. We accept you have some sort of thing which will heal you entirely. Whereas if you get knifed in a story, well, that's a pretty big deal. So that's just an
and lo-
observation. Yeah.
on that line as well, in Kiwami or in Yakuza, um, it's and I keep thinking about we talked briefly about like asset flips, and
Mm-hmm.
Yakuza is well known to reuse a lot of assets, but there's a lot of respect because they will just increase the size of the game and increase the polish, and
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't feel like. But one of the things that happens is like in Yakuza Kiwami, when I was playing that, I was playing with one specific fighting style, and I only had one heat action that I could use regularly, which
Mm-hmm.
was like a counter attack. And so you get a little cutscene where the person comes to punch you, and you smash their fist with your elbow, and you see their fingers get splayed out really grossly, like you've broken their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this one fight with Majima, who is like an ongoing sort of boss antagonist, and I've done this move maybe 3 times already in this one fight, and I was streaming it to some friends on Discord, and one friend goes, "Oh, ew, what? That was gross. That move was so bad." And I was like, "Yeah, I've done that 3 times," and then I keep fighting it, fourth, the fifth. They look back, it happens a sixth time. They're like, "Oh, you did it again?" And it's like that idea of like, yeah, stopping and thinking like, I know as a player, this animation is just being used because I'm doing a significant amount of damage.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's the same animation, when you stop and look at it, you're like, wow, I just broke his hand like 7 times in one fight with the same move. He really didn't learn, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's kind of. I mean, that's the game though.
Hmm.
That's what we have in games, isn't it? So
Yeah, but
we
it
kind of
feels
accept that
like,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, it's that same like moment you're saying here, where it's like when you try and
yeah,
translate game things we take for granted in a game into like a short story, it's like
yeah.
whoa. Or when someone just happens to look over your shoulder at a game you're playing, they can have that same experience where they're like, "What is going on?"
Yes, yeah, 100%, 100%. It's kind of interesting. I wonder whether there's anything to sort of learn from that, or whether is there a different way of doing things? Might be an interesting question.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels like it's the similar thing that you boil it down with your footstep sounds. Where it's like
hmm
you can use the same handful of sounds, and then the cheap solution is you just pitch shift it randomly.
yeah, sure.
But I don't know how
I
you.
love
I
a
don't know
cheap
what.
solution. I love a cheap
Yeah, I
solution.
don't know how that works for like a full animation though.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
randomly tweak the values and see what happens.
yeah. So anyway, so I'm just looking here. So okay, so you're still describing this. I mean, I think this is really good. So you he uses a block to grab you, try to pull free your arm, doesn't budge. The man smiles at my attempts. Yeah, a searing pain shoots through your body. You get knifed. Imagine if this happened in on the street. Someone knives you. I mean, you'd just be in shock. You couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Pulsating waves from your side. Unfortunately for them, they missed anything vital. Yeah, well, lucky. It was just your body. While being held, the small man pulls a knife out, ready for a second go. When I when I snap kick the knife out of the man's hand. So I'm assuming snap kick is like a particular type of move.
More so, there's a heat action you can use to uh, disarm a weapon's enemy and then take it for yourself.
Oh, okay.
So just kind of drawing on that to make that move I've seen fit naturally in this scene.
Right. Okay. Okay. Cool. It floats in the air, twisting and spinning, catching the light like the first snowflake of winter. The two are entranced. Headbutt the bigger man, who releases me to grasp his now profusely bleeding nose. Yeah, small man looks confused. Grab the knife and return the favour. He crumples to the floor, hands around the grip, um, while his body holds the blood. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think he's grateful. I missed anything vital. Did you miss? Oh, okay. While the bigger man is dazed, I grab his head, slam it into the wall, knocking him unconscious. Oh, okay. Okay, so they're all. So you didn't kill them then either.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's something I hadn't realized I was doing. It was subconscious, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, Yakuza 0, the whole plot revolves around this idea that you've been framed for killing somebody.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, and so, there's a lot in that game where it's like, no, nobody, you don't kill anybody, you just beat them up.
Yeah.
Most fights end where you see the goons get up and like hobble away. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
there's not
that.
a lot of killing.
That's so wholesome, isn't it?
Which it goes back to your point about, just casually getting stabbed
Yeah,
and being
yeah,
like,
that's right. Yeah.
we
Just
got
walk
some
it off. It's fine.
Panadol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just had a head smashed into the wall. No, it's no problem. Yeah, concussion. No,
No
no,
big
no. It's
deal.
all good. It's all good. Cool. So, okay. So I gained a little experience in this fight. Yeah. So okay, that's yeah. So okay. So it's interesting reading through it again and going through it in detail. So this is basically this paragraph and I guess the beginning here. So this is really all about the fight, isn't it? Now that I'm thinking about it. So this is the setup here. This is sort of the setup of the fight.
Yep.
This is where you meet them. Yeah. This sort of describes the beginning, the sort of beginning interaction. Then you've actually got what happens in the fight itself. And then it's sort of saying, okay, and from the fight, gained experience. Gained a good amount of money, suggesting that I wasn't the first target tonight. Pain in my side persists, but when I just walk it off, I need to be in full strength to do the way before those thugs. Sign of the distance sounds okay. And so, afterwards, so you patch yourself up. Okay, yeah, this is, it's interesting to read like someone else's version of a player story since I've only read my own so far. And then you've got the interaction with the man, and the resolution with the key as well. Cool. That's really interesting. That is really interesting to see. So, and you get that for free from Bigger Man. And then talking about your experiences made you stronger as well. So, yeah, interesting. I like to see that's really what I'm kind of wondering. Even with these, so with the story, I mean, you can kind of take this in a way, like I just have, in fact, right now, and you've almost got a design pattern kind of here as well. So you've got the setup, you've got your beginning of the interaction, you've got the actual the fight there, and then you've got the resolution, which is interesting to see. So you could kind of use that structure in it just itself, like that structure. So you could then take that, what you've got there, and potentially put different spins on that experience as a interacting with those thugs or with other things as well. So you could change things. For instance, you could play with the setup. For instance, so you might have a different type of setup going on here. You could play with the first, where you interact first up with them, and of course you can play with the fight itself. Maybe you got a boss fight one time, so that's a bit different. And then again, you can change these things as well. So yeah, that's really quite interesting to see. We should write a research paper on this stuff. Because I think this is I've never seen anything about like using these sort of player stories, and how they
Yeah,
work. Yeah, yeah. And
it's an interesting, like, my brain's split in the middle where one half is me is like, this is a really interesting design tool that I can use to develop, I guess what you're saying, like the patterns, or like in my brain I'm thinking like the gameplay loops.
Mhm.
And then the other half of me is like, what a really fun way to break down and analyze like other games, like
Mm.
what's happened here. And especially I was saying to Gemma, I forgot how much I enjoy narrative writing like this.
Mhm.
I can't. I don't have a mental image. Like I've got aphantasia, so there's nothing, no visuals in my head.
All right. Okay.
And so a lot of the time I get lost when I'm trying to do creative things, especially obviously like those visual artsy sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to do narrative like this,
Yeah.
it's really effective because if I've forgotten, I can just read a few lines up to sort of
Mm.
keep it fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to like what's the buzzword that people like? Wow, completely forgotten. Like, when you're criticizing movies and you're breaking down sort of the message behind a movie or a game or a piece of art,
The theme.
I've well, it's the
The th-
literacy,
mm-hmm.
media literacy. That's what
Oh,
I'm
okay.
thinking of.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, this feels like a great way to sort of, mediate that. It's not all happening in your head. You're not trying to break down 100 thoughts at once in your
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
Writing a narrative, a player story like this, it's
Yeah.
like, you have to take it in bite-sized chunks and do it one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Really interesting to see. I think. Um, well, the other question I was going to ask. So, with Arvo, you were talking about writing player stories, which you were then maybe going to use in Arvo. Is this? This sounds like it's probably not one of those. Seems a little focused on combat, which
Yeah,
is
well,
not
I was
Arvo.
I had Jeva read over it for me yesterday,
Mm.
and what I was saying is the combat, the way combat fits into Yakuza reminds me a lot of how we want driving and active shift specifically to fit into Arvo.
Really? So
In the sense,
how do you sort of see that as? Explain that to me.
so because it's a mechanic that is based around changing gears,
Mm-hmm.
so it's going to be most prevalent in tighter spaces when you're in towns having to do a lot of corners, slowing and speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine there's going to be sort of spaces and times in the player story where active shift is the priority going on. If you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to do something quickly, you have to be engaging it with it at full capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like when you get into a fight in Yakuza, it's like it takes up all of the bandwidth for the game. Um, and then when you get onto the open road or when you jump out the car to make a delivery, it's almost irrelevant. It's like, well, I don't need to engage with that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then also sort of the level of detail. Saying I could go into more detail with the fights in Yakuza to really break down narratively how they function.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a similar sort of level of detail would be really applicable for Arvo, going into detail about how the player story that involves active shift.
Okay.
Um, but that's more like,
I would like to see that. If you do that, I would really like to see how that works. After looking
yep,
at this, yeah, it'd be very interesting to sort of see what that translates to. So if you do that, let's have a look at it and
yeah,
let me compare
it's on
it
the
to.
docket.
It's on the docket. Okay, things to do.
Yes, prototype month we extended to be ending tomorrow.
Okay.
So by the weekend, we'll have the prototype for Arvo up on itch,
Mm-hmm.
unless something goes catastrophically wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so after that, I'll be jumping back to focusing on design docs and design thinking.
Cool. Cool. Okay. Good to hear. So then you might get on and do player stories,
Yeah, I would
which
like
you're
to.
gonna bring.
I don't know.
Nice.
I don't think it'll be as refined as this,
Mm-hmm.
just for the fact that this is based on Yakuza, a fully fledged game, whereas I think the first go for Arvo is I'm going to have to answer a lot of questions as I'm writing it.
Sure.
Um,
I
but
mean,
I think it'll
but
be
that
really
is,
helpful.
but that is exactly. I mean, that is the whole
Yeah,
point. Answering those questions now instead of when you're doing your development. I mean, that's
yeah,
part of the whole benefit
yeah,
of doing this. Yeah.
yeah. That's the plan. So hopefully
Okay.
next week I'll have some good Arvo stuff to show off.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Sounds good. Okay, man. Well, with that, I think we can probably round that up. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.